So hello guys, good evening everybody. So first of all, thanks for coming. This is one of the sessions of Career Services. I'm Alex, Director of Career Services. I'm also a professor here in the university. So I'm very glad to have today Will Walker, good friend of mine. He's the South Florida VP of Robert Half. Robert Half speaks by itself, so he's a large recruiter. I think he's the 8th in the United States.
I don't know if we're 8th. We're the world's largest, most specialized, and Forbes actually has us at #1 on executive search staffing firm and temporary staffing firm.
Yeah, so they're very high on they're everywhere we have Robert Half. So Robert Half is a recruiting company, and they always come to our career fairs. I'm always working with Will. He sends me positions, etc. He's a recruiter. So what I decided to do from a career service perspective is call somebody who lives by hiring people for other companies. What is required to get a job? What are the things that you as a candidate, now a student but future candidate, will need to prepare to get a job? What are the requirements? And also ask him what employers want. You get hired, you get your job, and then what? In the United States, it's different than other countries. That's a very different culture. So you need to adjust to many things. So he will give us these in a conversational way, like we did last time. We're going to talk, and then we're going to open for questions from you to him. So I want to start. I want to sit down here so we don't stand up. But Will, first of all, thanks for coming. It's really a pleasure to have
Absolutely.
you. And I always like to talk to you because you always you give me a lot of good stuff on the market, on the trends, on hiring. So let me ask you a question. The topic of today is how to get to the job market successfully. That's the idea of the conversation. So and always about the candidate, right? Looking at the students, they will look for jobs, etc. So let's start with your initial considerations. What does it take to get to the job market successfully?
Yeah, I think when you're thinking about the job market as a whole, right now it's one of the most aggressive markets that we've ever seen. I think we're still at a 3.4% unemployment rate, which if that doesn't mean right from a percentage point, right? If you look at 4%, right, that's negative unemployment. And so when you're at a 4% unemployment rate, we call that negative unemployment in the economy. We're at 3.4% right now. So it's below a negative 4%. We're the lowest unemployment rate that we've seen since, I think it's 1969. Now, we're at a university, so 1.8% is the unemployment rate for college degreed workers aged 25 plus, which is astonishing. So the job market really does favor somebody who's looking for it. The challenge is navigating the market. So if you're looking for a job, and right as you're kind of graduating, right, moving to that next step in your career, one of the things that people have no idea is that most of the positions that companies are hiring for aren't even posted online, right? And that's a challenge. You're right. You got to know someone, and it's how do we get there, right? And there's so many places that I can look for a job. There's LinkedIn, Career Builder, Dice. There's hundreds of job boards, and then you're navigating an applicant tracking system once you do apply, and then you've got to get through that. Then you've got to go through a screening of a recruiter. Then that recruiter's going to send a resume to a hiring manager who's going to review it and then give feedback. And we're going through 8, 9, 10 channels before you even get a phone conversation. So it's how do I circumvent that? And that's what people want to know. So maybe it's a networking event, right? It's something like this. It's going to a career fair, finding someone that you can meet. Meetup.com, Eventbrite are places that I always point people to. Find a group that is meeting about the career that you aspire to get into. Go learn from the people who are doing it. Go learn from the managers. Introduce yourself. Because if I'm at an event, right, and somebody is there to meet other people because they're looking at a job, that's an impression that you cannot put on a piece of paper, right? It's vocal interaction, it's verbal interaction, and it's meeting people face to face. And it's the getting a job itself, it's a full-time job. And if you apply somewhere, right, from time to time, it's going to be difficult just hoping that a piece of paper gets us there. Now, I've got tips on resumes, right, but getting into the market is a job, right? It does take work, and we can talk about that a little bit more with the questions, but I do think that one of the biggest takeaways to start all of this off is meeting people face to face, getting out at events, and learning and meeting managers, and just asking them, hey, I'm graduating in X amount of time, right? What would you look for with someone who is coming out of a university, who's coming out of a program like this, and then learn and start applying that as you go?
Right. So these are great recommendations, because one of the things I tell people is all of you should be going to career fairs and industry events on a regular basis. A lot of students come to me when I say that is, oh, but I cannot work yet. I don't have my OPT. I don't have my visa. That does not matter, because you need to practice your engagement skills with recruiters. So the first time you go may not go that well. You'll feel a little strange. You'll not be very communicative. People are not going to understand you. Second time goes better. Third time goes a lot better, and goes like this. Secondly, you will know people, and they start to know you and know them. One thing I want to also, so going to events, career, and our calendar in career service, we have a lot of the events, industry fairs, job fairs in the South Florida. Also industry events, not career events. When people, for example, digital marketing conference, some of the conferences are free or they're very cheap for students. So you should connect, because you'll meet a lot of people. Another thing I want to give you, he mentioned about LinkedIn. LinkedIn has groups that you can create. So when you go to LinkedIn, let's say you are interested in digital marketing. There are groups of digital marketing. You should join the group in LinkedIn and activate your connections with people that are part of the group, because these individuals are also sharing things on digital marketing. So that gives you an edge on finding information about digital marketing. So as Will said, finding a job is a full-time job.
It is, and you mentioned social media, which is interesting. So we've got 4 generations in the workforce today, which is unprecedented. We've never really been in this territory before, and I love it, right, because it makes me think differently, which is incredible. But there's more than just LinkedIn. Now, some people are on Facebook, and you can actually get on Facebook to find a job, right? But make sure your Facebook is safe to communicate with people, you know. But 2 other places, Gen Z, really getting into Instagram when it comes to digital marketing, hiring, front-end, web development, right? So these companies that are in the startup phase are going to be posting on LinkedIn because it's free for them to do it. It's really, really expensive to post a job, especially when you have so many different areas that you can post it that cost money. So companies are kind of pushing towards LinkedIn, right? Maybe you're commenting or making a post rather than actually listing the opening. But 2 other areas, right, the Instagram aside, Twitter. Twitter is gold. And Twitter is a great place to connect with people. You can communicate directly with executives. They'll post, you know, ask me anythings, and if you follow them or follow hashtags for Miami, South Florida, Fort Lauderdale technology, you can probably end up communicating and getting your foot in the door with someone that a phone call, you wouldn't have been able to do it.
Right. Yeah, this is great. So for the sake of time, Will, I wanted to give you quickly some of the points that we usually work on the job process, like the resume, the LinkedIn. So let's start with the resume. What are because we don't have a lot of time to explore before we open for questions in detail, but give some pointers about resumes.
Yeah, I think, right, not a lot of time is important. I always make a joke, right? You're perfect 2 days in your life, and it's the day you're born and the day you write your resume. Substance over length, right? Like I mentioned earlier, there's an applicant tracking system that you may be going into. There's hundreds of them, so it's challenging. They want buzzwords. They look for keywords that are used organically, right? Not an alphabet soup at the top of your resume with every buzzword there is, but substance over length. So that is kind of it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. I really push people and say, hey, for every job you're applying to, you should have a resume just for that job. Look at what the context is, right? I'll use, maybe you're trying to become a network analyst and you want to apply to 15 network analyst roles. The challenge is that every single one of those probably has some different type of technology or different buzzwords in there. So if you organically input how you have the experience with what they're looking for, it usually does help. A cover letter is really, really important still. It doesn't need to be 14 paragraphs long, right? And if you've got experience that dictates that you need a resume longer than 1, 2, 3 pages, that's okay. You don't need a 1-page resume either. But quantify everything that you've done, how maybe you save time, money, increase customer service, support, revenue, things like that, and that'll really go with it.
Yeah, one thing I see a lot of resumes when you guys send it to me, I see some people always say, do not do that. For example, people say skills, and they say honesty, integrity. I'm a leader.
Yeah.
So I am proactive. I'm a choice-worthy. I said, guys, if you have to say that in a resume, which then doesn't add a lot of specifics, then you have a problem. So those are things people are looking at, you said, substance. Like I work in sales, 5 years of growth sales, 10% year over year. 5 years of CRM, Salesforce, using customer. Those are the skills. Don't say that I'm proactive.
Right.
I'm a friendly I have seen it all. Friendly. I'm very outgoing. I'm proactive. So don't do that, because those are just blah, blah, blah. They don't have any value, right?
I think that, the objective statement that you're referring to at the top of resumes, that's dead, right? It's have a summary of what you're looking for. Right, this is who I am as an individual,
exactly.
But this is what I'm bringing to the table, to a company, for this position, to take it to the next level.
Exactly.
It's okay to brag. Brag.
No, exactly. But one thing I wanted to, for the sake of time, because unfortunately I'd like to be with him like the whole day, so we have a lot of stuff to talk about. But let's talk about interview.
I think that's great.
What is the general recommendation for a successful interview?
Okay, so preparation's always key. Do your research on the company, read the job description, do your research on who you're meeting with. I think it's great if you can find a way to connect with a manager. So go to their Twitter if they have one, and obviously look at their LinkedIn. One of the best things you can do in an interview, I think Amazon started this, but it's the STAR method. So I wrote this down as situation, task, action, and results. So if I ask someone, tell me how you've utilized this technology, and they say, well, yeah, I know it, okay? Or at this company, I did this. This is what I solved, and these were the results, right? And relating it back to your experience. And honesty is the best policy when it comes to an interview. If you've never used it outside of a classroom, that's okay, right? But maybe relate to a time that you didn't know something at a job, how you learned it quickly, and then how you're able to do the same thing again with the technology at hand or any of the other skill sets. Another thing, everything's virtual now. Right, your first step of an interview used to be a phone screen, and now it's going to go straight to video most of the time. So there's 20 different types of communication methods with a video now probably. Make sure it works. Have your friend, hey, I need to test out a free Zoom link to make sure my technology is working. Make sure there's nothing cluttered in the background. Make sure, if you have art on the wall, maybe it's straight. Don't have a pile of unfolded clothes on the bed, right? I'm guilty of it, okay? I've done it with a customer before and put up a virtual background when COVID first hit. So I think that that's important to make sure your audio works and get there early, even though it is a video meeting, right? Still take the approach, 15 minutes early is on time, and you'll have to sit there and wait patiently, but that's okay. And if you do have your video on and you're waiting, make sure that you're presentable. Yes. Don't walk around and wait for them to join, right? Be there, be ready.
Yeah, one thing is like this, guys. No cats, no dogs. You have an interview with the dog barking on the background, not a good thing. He's not part of the interview. We don't want to interview the dog or the cat or the bird. So make sure there's nothing like this. And I have seen cases when you have like a clutter background, people have like clothes hanging or something. Not a good idea. Use a virtual background. So the other thing is about the virtual thing is almost like a real thing. It's like you have to behave like you're physically with an employer or a company. So the whole thing applies, the etiquette and the everything, right?
And sometimes people go into an interview and they're at their current job and they step away to their car. Just make sure you converse with the manager you're meeting ahead of time. Say, hey, I'm going to have this on my lunch break. Is it okay if I take it from my phone in my car? That's a common thing. Just don't surprise people with it. And with an interview, there's two things. It's always relevant questions, right, of what's a 30, 60, 90-day plan, right? What does a great employee do differently than a good employee? What do you expect to see out of someone in this position? And if someone asks you, do you have any questions, and you say no, it kind of gives that perception like, hey, I'm not really interested in this position. And if you are interested, close yourself. That's the thing that I tell a candidate every single time before they go into an interview. Tell the manager, I'm interested in this position. I think my skill set is relevant to this, and I'm excited for the opportunity to take the challenge with this role. Let me know what the next steps are, right? That right there, that line, even if the beginning of the interview is rocky, can usually bring it home.
So I'm going to make 2 comments on top of that. Number one, never talk about the salary, about, do you have any questions for me, like on an interviewer, how much the position pays? Not a good idea. Secondly, if they ask you about a weakness that you have, don't have a weakness that is against the job that you're applying for. For example, you apply for a sales position, you say, I really don't like to work with people, I prefer like to work alone. That's not a good idea, because you're applying for a finance job. I have a little problem with numbers. That's not my strong thing. I like people. I don't like numbers. But the positions about numbers, well, that already put you out of the process, right?
Yeah, and so I'll agree with the second one, but the first one I'm going to disagree with on the money. I do think the way that you said it, right, how much is this paying? Usually the managers won't get into negotiations, but from time to time it is okay to do your own research on the salary. And it is a little bit okay to negotiate. I think 71% of managers now are expecting some type of pushback when it comes to an offer. So don't go crazy and don't say I want $50,000 more. You're probably going to get escorted out of the room. But it's okay to go up a little bit, right, if you have done your research and the market is paying higher than that on average. And then on the weakness, this is one that drives me crazy. Don't say, some people say I care too much. That's not the correct answer, right? It's okay to open up a little bit. You don't have to go really deep. But if you can say, I do get a little frustrated from time to time because I'm passionate about my work, but this is how I've corrected that mistake in the past. And it goes back to that STAR method kind of that I was talking about. And so when you share your weakness, also share how you overcome your weakness.
So moving on to the next step I want to ask you is about the social media, particularly LinkedIn. So what are your general recommendations about LinkedIn or any other one, but particularly LinkedIn, but you can talk about any of the social media. You mentioned a little bit before, but what would you add in terms of how to have a good profile on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I think, it needs to match your resume. So make sure your dates line up on LinkedIn, the same ones that they are on your resume. And if your resume is on your LinkedIn profile, make sure that it's ready to go, no errors, typos, things like that. But from a LinkedIn standpoint, I think that's an area kind of that you can quantify more information. You can even sometimes input more info. But everything starts off with a professional headshot. Maybe ask a couple of your professors to write a letter of recommendation, past employers' letters of recommendation, colleagues, right? It's okay to have peer references. Make sure you list your volunteer experience. People love giving back to the community. And if you show that you volunteer a lot, that's a great thing as well.
Yeah, that's nice. And another thing I tell is, once you have a Facebook account or other social media like Instagram, other things in your life, personal life, that becomes a potential liability for you. So we have to be very careful about those things, because then people will check, that information, it becomes a problem. Now, I want to ask you now about networking, because network itself, I think, is a talent. To be a good networker is not, you need to learn, because a lot of people think that networking is about asking. And networking has this give and get. You ask people, you give them as well, right? So what do you think about, because networking, I think, is ultimately what gets you a job, right? So how to network properly?
Yeah, I think that, if you're going to an event, maybe it's after school or you're in between things, you need to dress for the job you want, even in any interview, not the job that you're applying for. And it goes the same thing with networking. Now, we're in South Florida, right? So I'm in a jacket today, but the video behind me, I was in a T-shirt, right? People wear that, or a polo. Make sure that you're reviewing kind of the attire. I think that's everything to start off. Now, with a network, I give presentations to my own company on this all the time. You've got to work a room. So sometimes that's the front door. Sometimes that's where they are serving beverages. That's a good place to meet people. But don't have a conversation with one person at a networking event. If it's going well, say, hey, this is a really good conversation, but I got to go meet some more people. Can we continue this at another time, right? And invite them for coffee. That's something good that you can do. I think networking is everything. Maybe have a copy of your resume, or it's really easy to get a QR code, right? And just have a QR code for your resume so they can scan that to contact you. But those are some really good tips, kind of high level on networking.
Yeah. So one thing I tend to say is like this, guys. At the end of the day, when we have and I hire lots of people, we have 10 candidates or 5 candidates, we will hire the ones that we like. That's bottom line, right?
Yes.
So you can be the smartest person, you can be the nicest guy or lady, but at the end of the day, you have the super geek thing, you have like 20 degrees, but at the end of the day, your ability to connect with people and people like you will get you the job. And then we're going to talk in a bit about what happens when you already have a job, how you move. So, but that's, very important.
I think so too, right? And most of the people in today's world don't hire based on just experience, right? If you see a job, you don't meet all the qualifications, still apply. It's okay to do that, but let your personality shine, share a little bit about your outside activities from work, let your personality show. And maybe, you talk about a sport and maybe you like racquetball or volleyball. That manager might be interested, or people on the team have the same hobbies and interests, and that gives you a leg up. But yes, people 100% hire who they like, as long as they do know a little bit about the job.
Right. So one thing I want to ask you, which is important so you did everything right, you got the job, you got hired, and then what? So what do you see when people are working the first time? 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, how should be the concerns or the focus of the new employees, students that got the job? What should they do?
I think the more people you meet, the better, right? Other departments learn what works, what doesn't work. And if you can meet more people, that's great at a company. 30, 60, 90 days game plans, we were talking about this before, and it's presenting that to someone and saying, hey, this is my game plan based on the interview and our conversations of what I should do in the first 90 days. Could you review it and get back to me and see if there's anything you could change? I think asking people to shadow, if people, there's time that you can work maybe an hour later and give part of that time to see what someone else does who is successful on the team is a great thing to do. But one thing that I would advise against, right, is just kind of going into work and not talking to anybody, right? You've got to get out and you've got to meet people, because one day down the road, one of those people that you meet in your first 90 days could have a huge impact on your career later down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm going to do now, because I think this conversation is very valuable, and he does that for a living. He connects with lots and lots of candidates looking for jobs and presenting them to companies. So I want to open up to questions, for questions from the audience to Will, that we can start a conversation. Anybody has a question for him in terms of yeah, go ahead.
Hello, thank you. So I have 3 questions actually. The first question is, when a company is trying to hire someone, the status of his immigration, knowing that he's supposed to get sponsored or something by the company, would that hinder the, onboarding process?
That's a really good question, because you mentioned OPT earlier, right? And it's a challenge. I think being upfront about it is a good thing. And having that conversation with them. Now, if you do have a student visa and you can find a company that's an E-Verify company, that really could help a lot when it comes to getting onboarded, because it's really simple for them to get that OPT extended with the federal government.
Based on your experiences, would they try to ignore the OPT status, seeking employments, or they're just like, oh, they're too much work, let's just get to the other part?
That's a really tough question, but it also is an ethical boundary. I think people kind of ignoring that is a problem. I don't necessarily think that people ignore it. I do think it's important just to be honest with them. But a lot of times, some companies and certain types of positions, right, they have programs in place to assist with that. So that is a tough question. We can talk a lot about it, because if you'd like, a little bit later, because I know the challenges and difficulties, not personally, right, but I do see it a lot. The biggest thing that I can say is the only times I see it go south is when nobody says anything until it's time for them to get the job, and it usually is a train wreck.
Makes sense. All right. So the second part of the question is, when someone, a recruiter, is looking at my, resume, what is more attractive? Is it the continuity of the experience that I have, or the diversity of it, or is it more of what are they looking at? If I have a year only employment at each company, is that attractive for them?
So I actually gave a presentation kind of similar to this. I think some people themselves are like, I don't want to take a contract role. Continuous employment is better than employment gaps. Now, We just got out, well, still kind of are in a pandemic, right? And so people have gaps on their resume. Explain it, whether it's in your cover letter or you put it on your resume. There's tons of articles out there that you can find. But I think explaining the reason you have a gap on your resume is important. And the average lifespan of most positions are 12 to 18 months nowadays. So I actually have more of a concern with one person, and I'm knocking on myself, at one company for 7 years than I do somebody who has actually advanced their career for upward movement. If you continue to make lateral moves, that sometimes is a red flag. But if every role is a step up for you, and it's okay to say I took that opportunity even though I only was there for 7 months because they gave me $10,000 more and my other company couldn't pay me that much money. That's fine. Just be honest.
All right, makes sense. The last part is, how can someone connect with you, like later on? Like,
I've got a business card, and you can just come scan the QR code later, or you can find me on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect. I do manage a team of recruiters. I usually am 90% of the time dealing with customers, but I'm happy to get anyone connected as best as I can across Florida or other states as well. I think we have 200 technology offices and about 100 creative offices in the United States.
Awesome.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to highlight is that on a weekly basis, mostly weekly basis, I share the Robert Half positions to all the students. So, and when students come back and say, I'm interested in that position, I send a resume. Usually I send a note to him saying, hey, this such and such student is interested. He applies or she applies in the website. But Robert Half and I, Will and I have been working 2 years now, 3 years. So we have been doing this thing on a regular basis. So if you're interested in a position that I post on Friday, usually I post on Fridays directly from their website. You just have to connect with me. We'll look at those positions, if you really can apply or not in terms of my recommendation. And I'll recommend to him. Remember, I do not hire. He hires, or he helps to hire. So some people say, can I get a job? I say, well, it depends on you. We're going to prepare you, but at the end of the day, it's your effort, it's your work. I cannot make you hire, get you hired. You will get hired.
I can give kind of the recruiter answer, right? And it's be a squeaky wheel when you apply to an agency. There is a step too far when it comes to a company. It's okay to talk to every agency in town. It's okay to apply to agencies that aren't in town. But it's a numbers game when it comes to the agency world. And if you work with 15, you've got a better chance than working with just one. I can do everything in my power, but if he posts something on Friday and a manager makes a decision on a resume I sent over the weekend, those roles at a staffing agency are gone at the drop of a hat. I had one that was open and closed in 30 seconds today. They move quick. So monitor your email, monitor your text. When you're on the job hunt, you've got to be ready to go with the call. And when you do get the call, make sure you answer like, hello, this is my name. But say your name, not my name.
Yeah, so any other questions from the people in the audience? Additional questions? Yeah, we have a question in the back there.
Hi. We usually talk about certifications, right?
Yep.
Certifications.
Mm-hmm.
Do certifications play that major role to get hired?
So from time to time, if it's a relevant certification, I do think, right, it's good to have your letters right after your name, whatever type of cert that is. I do think that it needs to be an accredited certification. So a LinkedIn certification, I think those are great courses. LinkedIn does a great job with them. But that's not really the same thing that would hold a weight with maybe something like CompTIA or a Microsoft certification or an AWS certification. As long as they're completed and they're current and accurate, because now I think most of them last about 3 years, I do think it's great to put on your resume, especially if they apply to the job that you're looking for. That's a really good question.
Good evening, sir. I'm Pragnya from MIT. So after my bachelor's, I directly came to my master's. So I am fresher. I don't have any work experience. So can you please suggest me like how to grab attention from the recruiter? As a fresher, I don't have experience. But when I see the job requirements, it's like 5 years of experience, 2 years of experience, like that. So
yeah, that's just an age-old problem that I wish would go away but won't. I remember years ago somebody asked for 15 years of social media experience, and social media wasn't even around for that long. So you're always going to run into that. But I do think, write the cover letter. So this is what you're looking for. This is how I have applied it. right? This is what I've learned, and this is why I'm interested. It really is good if you are or have less experience sometimes to talk to someone and say, I know that I don't meet those requirements, but odds are you might work a lot harder than somebody with those 5 years of experience, and if you can convey that to them, it usually goes a long way.
Yeah, one thing I suggest people do when you don't have any experience is that some of the university projects are very complex or very long, and you can highlight them in terms of project experience, etc., which could be relevant to you. So that also could be part of your resume, not as employment, but also as a relevant experience by putting, because some of the people even continue with that project using in a workplace, or they even commercialize that project. So it's an option that you can consider. You don't have to do properly, but it's also play a good role as well. Good projects in the universe, like a final project, et cetera, and you describe it, et cetera.
Or include the link to a GitHub or any sites or portfolios that you may have. That's always great.
So how much time do we have, Professor Mia? Okay, so we got to keep moving. So let's
luck.
Have two more, three
A
questions,
final?
and that's it. Yeah.
You came here before? I would have been cramming.
So I got two more questions. That's it, guys, unfortunately. So just to get moving quickly. So you have a question? My friend.
Hi, this is Hari. I have a question. Last year also, like around in the month of March, like because of the COVID, and now again recession, and is the market will go better, like, or it will go like worse? I hear some news like from some other mates, like it's gonna be worse in the month of May or something like that. So as per your experience and the knowledge, like,
so yeah, I'll answer this to my best ability and throw a disclaimer that I'm not an economist and I can't predict the future, even though I wish I could. One thing that you will see, inflation's going up because wage is high, and we're trying to drop down, well, not we, the government is trying to drop down the rise in the wages. But when things do get a little bit tougher, people switch to a contract or a variable kind of cost model when it comes to employment. So you kind of hit this porpoising or a seesaw type effect. If the market's really good, they're going to hire direct. If the market starts to take a dip, they want to be able to kind of have a variable cost or cut ties if they need to without the extra baggage. And so people will start kind of posting contract type roles a little bit more. The amount of jobs that are being added is still, historically high, and we're seeing 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 jobs posted and added. So I don't know if it'll be as soon as May. I can tell you, based on our business, I definitely hope not. But it's the most anticipated downturn that we've had in a while, so it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
yeah.
But don't be shy to apply to contracts is the kind of end question or end game there.
Yeah, guys, so we're gonna keep it with closing. Just one final reminder, March 23, which is 24 days away, we're gonna have a career fair right here, and we'll be back. We're gonna have a career fair. We already have 15 companies confirmed. My target is 25 companies right here, March 23rd, from 1:30 to 4:30. So you should come, looking for a job, not looking for a job, have a job, don't have a job, just come and network with people, use the opportunity, dress up properly, bring a copy of your resume, show professionalism. But we're gonna have right here, March 23rd. I will send the calendar very soon. And a lot of companies, and himself included, will be here, so you'll have a chance to connect with him on a one-on-one basis. So Will, thanks very much for your presence. It's always a pleasure to see you.
Absolutely.
And talk to you. So we're going to have. So I wish we had like 3 hours of conversation, but we don't. But you come back. You come back.
We got the podcast to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very good.
Good luck on the final exam. Thank you all for being here. And the job search is probably not going to be as tough as her test.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think he deserves another round of applause. He was absolutely amazing, right? The information that he shared with you about going out into the job market and penetrating the career force was very, very valuable. So on behalf of Atlantis University, Professor Lima, all of our professors. Professors, please raise your hand. We have Professor Fuchs here, Professor DeJour, and a few others. On behalf of the president of the university and myself, we want to give you this certificate of appreciation. And it says this certificate is presented to Will Walker for serving as a guest speaker and sharing your knowledge, wisdom, and experience on preparing to enter the job market successfully at Atlantis University. We appreciate you.
So guys, thanks very much again for the participation. This is a series that we're going to have in the future. More speakers coming. It's always good to have you here. And I wish you good luck with your final exam. So guys, thanks very much for coming. Have a great day.